Okay guys, this is Intro to Premiere Pro, a new series I'm starting. I really am hoping that this works out because I've been kind of dabbling in different areas on this channel and I like where this is going. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the outline of what we are going to be doing. So first thing we're going to be looking at is what is the timeline. And I just wanted to point out right off the bat, this is going to be a very basic series, so if you already know a bunch about Premiere and you're just looking for an advanced education in it, this is not the tutorial for you. This is for flat out beginners. If you have never used Premiere before and you need to learn Premiere, this is the series for you. Going on that, we are going to be looking at the scrub bar. So what is scrubbing? We will go over that in the tutorial. It's a bit easier to show than to explain, but essentially it is moving your cursor, I guess, down the timeline. Alright, and then secondly, we're going to look at how we can use the scrub bar, what its purpose is other than moving the cursor. And then, or I say cursor, but it's a bit more complicated than that. And then we'll also go over frames, and by frames I mean the actual makeup of a video, and we'll go over that as well. So next on the list is clips. So what is a clip? We'll go over that, and then how can we import and use clips, and how can we manipulate them. And by manipulate I mean things like cutting and sizing and making the speed different. We'll go over things like that. And then we'll go over cursors. What is a cursor? What does each cursor do? It'll be really nice to understand everything on this list because after all it's all very important. So without further ado, let's go into Premiere. We're going to make a new project. And this is the first thing that we're going to go over actually. So we're just going to name it project, and I'm going to name it tutorial 1. But you can name it however you like. And then scratch disks is something you should know about. Right now I have my scratch disk set to an external hard drive. You can see 1 terabyte underscore dooms. That is my 1 terabyte hard drive. I keep it plugged in almost at all times, except for when I've got my computer elsewhere. Basically, I just wanted to let you know you can change how Premiere views your computer. So if you want all of your files and renders to go to an external hard drive, then you're just going to hit browse and you're going to go to wherever your hard drive is. Mine is right here, and you would make a new folder especially for Premiere Pro, and you would probably make another folder for data. I usually call it something like that. And then yeah, see, I made mine YouTube Premiere captured video. That is basically just a vague term that I used for Premiere. You can name it however you like, but that's what I used. That's the terminology I used. So we're going to go back over to General, and don't change the location unless you change your scratch disk, and even then it should stay under your computer because that'll be where all your projects go unless you specifically want to save it onto an external hard drive. I recommend having plenty of hard drive space on your computer at all times. Sorry about my phone. So that you can afford to keep your projects on the computer. It's a lot easier if you don't have to go and find your projects on some hard drive. It's a lot easier to keep track of them. The only reason I do this is because I run out of computer space quite often. My scratch disk is a lot different from where the project is. So the project is just a file that Premiere knows how to read. Your scratch disk is where it's going to keep all of the video previews and renders and everything, and all of the real beefy stuff that goes 100 gigs plus sometimes if you're really working on something big. That's where that will go, and so it keeps your computer nice and clean. So we're going to go back to General now. And for display format, I usually keep timecode because it's a lot easier to understand. But a lot of people like frames. I personally do like frames, but I prefer timecode. And we'll go over the differences later in different tutorials. And then under audio, Display format, I'm gonna keep it at audio samples. It's basically just wave formats, or not wave formats, I'm sorry, wave previews. So those little lines that go up and down, I'll show you later. That is basically just a wave preview. And then capture format, we're going to keep it on HDV. DV is for when you have standard definition video. So it wouldn't be 1280 by 720, it would be below that. Anything below 1280 by 720, you just choose DV. It's a bit more complicated than that, but it's just a general rule of thumb. So go ahead and hit OK. I'm going to minimize this. Alright, so now we have this big menu that kind of looks scary, and for you, if you're just now opening Premiere, then it'll look more like that with nothing extended. Alright, so now we are on this menu, and we're going to go over to HDV. This is where most of your formats are going to come from. Other formats are for those nitpicky people that really like to just match up with their camera. Generally though, it's okay to come in here. So we're going to stick in here. I usually choose HDV 720p with 24 frames. That basically is just HD video, high definition video, 720 pixels, 24 frames. That's what those three things mean. We're we're gonna choose 1080p just to show you how to do it, because if you start with something lower, then you won't know what you're missing basically, and it'll be good practice. So we're gonna just call our sequence, we're just gonna leave it sequence 1. Sometimes if you have scenes, like if you're making a skit, then you're probably gonna name this whatever scene that is, and you're gonna keep all those clips put together, and then you're gonna make new sequences later, and then the sequences will be all together in the end. So under settings, you usually don't want to mess with these, because when you choose your preset, it'll automatically set everything over here. However, sometimes, like for instance 1440, that isn't generally exactly what 1080p is. So let me just show you what 1080p looks like. Okay, so this is what I was looking for. Right here, as you can see, that's a bit more than 1440 pixels. You can just kind of tell, because the official format is actually 1920 by 1080. Here it is. So there are true 1920 pixels in width and 1080 pixels in height. So this right here is actually not true 1080p, because it's actually 1080 in the height and 1440 in the width. So we're actually going to change that. We're going to check that first of all, and then see, it's got this locked right here. Let's see, I've never experienced this before. Okay, here we go. So if you wanted to just kind of let you do this, everything is the same. It's just under this special preset, I'm gonna say, and it has 1920 by 1080. That is full 1080p. So we're gonna leave everything else the same. So yes, that is still the same. Nope, it's not. Okay. So just to let you know, if you click over here, it's actually going to not use that. So we're going to save this preset. Okay. And now it shows up under custom, and this is just a nice example of what you can do. So we're going to hit OK at this point. And then it'll just take a little bit to load up. It'll look like it's not doing anything. Pop up. Okay, so now after it loads up a little bit more, I say that, but it's really just stopping the lag. So under your media browser and project over here, this entire window right here is your media browser, no matter what window you're under. I'm just gonna call it a regular browser from now. It's officially called a media browser, but it doesn't really make sense because one of them is called media browser. So anyway, because you can also go over here to effects and also, you know, info about the clip. So it's not really a media browser in that sense, it's just what the window is called. This is your preview over here, your clip preview, and then this is your project preview. This is your timeline, obviously. If you don't know what a timeline is, we'll go over the definition right now. And I like using Google. It's a very useful resource, and it'll just bring it up for us. A graphical representation of a period of time on which important events are marked. And basically that just means exactly what it says. Certain clips set on the timeline are the events it was talking about. So it's just a set of events on a period of time. Now if your computer is weird like mine, then when you start to move back and forth quite a bit, it'll just keep going. So it's kind of strange. So anyway, but whatever. So let's start with making a simple clip. So in our media browser, we're going to go to the hard drive that we want to access, and then we're going to go to the folder in which our clips reside. Let's go right here. So your clips will show up here, and a lot of people just try to drag it over, and that really won't work. It works, but it's like it doesn't like it. We're gonna keep existing settings. That it's basically saying that the footage does not match the preset that we chose, so it's okay. Just make sure that the format that you're recording in, whether it be 720p 24 frames or 1080p 24 frames or 30 frames even, just make sure you choose that preset for your camera. And it's very easy to figure out what your camera shoots in. So we have this clip right here. We're actually going to delete it because that's not really the proper way to import a clip. It works, it just is not, it's not very good. So we're just gonna, and then up here in our clip preview, it'll pop up and we can actually view the entire clip right here. And what I like to do is I like to choose when I think my video truly starts, because there's always that point where your video isn't really started yet. And so we're gonna hit I where we think the video starts, and that'll set our end point. That's basically where the clip will start once it's on the timeline. So then we're gonna use this little scrub bar right here, and I'll explain what the scrub bar is a little bit later when we go over it in the timeline. And we're gonna go over, we're gonna click and drag over to where we think our video should end, or where the clip should end. And then we can either use this little button in here to mark it out, or we can use O. And over here I used I in case I didn't mention that. Okay, so now that that is set, we have our entire video, and as you can see, you can actually edit these even further if you wish. Okay, so now we're going to either insert it by clicking here, and or we are going to use the comma key. So I'm going to hit the comma key, and then we are going to see that it imported the trimmed clip, I'm going to say, into the timeline. So as you can see, it is now working as we would expect it to. Alright, so this is your scroll bar right here. This timeline is where you're going to be doing a lot of your work, in fact most of your work. So now we see this little scroll bar right here, and we see a couple of boxes on the edges. These boxes are basically the size of your timeline. So dragging it out is going to zoom out from the timeline. So your clip is not getting shorter, you're just zooming out so you can see more of the clip. So say you have 5 clips here, zooming out will let you see all 5 clips without affecting the timeline itself. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, let's move on to the scrub bar. The scrub bar is basically how you preview video without actually going up and hitting play. Now this can be useful in certain circumstances. If you want to preview the audio, this has to be turned on, and we'll look over that later. But if you want to preview the audio without actually playing the clip, you can, and you can start to see where audio starts and ends. So if you have, for instance, if you have one of these, okay, a clapper is basically what people use to sync up audio. So if you have an external microphone that you want to sync up with video, so you record your audio and you record your video all at the same time, roughly, not always, but roughly. So you have, let's say we're going to unlink this, so now these are separate. You don't need to pay attention to that too much, but just to let you know. So we have separated these clips, so now we have separate audio and video files. They are no longer moving together. So now they're out of sync, and you don't know that they're out of sync, you just know that they're not where they should be. And to make that more clear, okay, now they are truly out of sync. So now you have no idea where the audio starts and ends for both clips. So what people often do is they use the clapper at the very beginning. You always see at the beginning of a clip, like say in the credits of a movie, you'll see the person, hit the clapper and they'll say what clip it is, and how many scenes how many takes they've had, which scene it is, and everything like that. You can also see everything here. And so they'll just slap that at the very beginning, or clap it, hence the name clapper. And that gives the audio people a way to look at the very nitpicky little audio pieces. Okay, so now we're going to move on to frames, and we're actually going to mute this by clicking this toggle track output right here, and as you can see, it's now muted. So now we're going to use our arrow keys, left and right arrow keys, to move along in the video, and it moves agonizingly slow, and you might wonder, what in the world are you doing? But you're actually moving one frame at a time, and this can be useful in many circumstances. And as you can see, each little dot on that little ruler there along the timeline is actually one frame. And it's very useful to keep track of your frames, especially if you're doing things like animation and audio sync up and everything like that. So now we're going to move on to clips. So what is a clip? A clip is a part of a video. It's not a full video, it's just part of a video, or part of a project. So if you have, don't pay attention to what I'm doing, but if you have multiple clips and you're using each of those clips in your final video, the entire video is not a clip, it's a video. However, these little things right here, those are clips. Little sections of the video that you've lined up. Elements, I guess you could call them, objects. So a clip is not a full video, it's just part of the video. How can we import and use clips? We've already looked over importing. Now, using, it's a little bit of a vague term. However, I'm gonna jump across to manipulate because they kind of go hand in hand. So we've already looked at a little bit of the cursors, but we're actually gonna go full-fledged into that because those two tie in really nicely together. So what is a cursor? So cursor is exactly what you see on your screen right now. I've got a big old image of it. A cursor is exactly what you use to control your computer. It's a visual representation of a pointer in a space, and it's basically just one point where you can actually control your computer from. So the cursor is exactly what you would think it would do. It's exactly just a control. So as you can see, when you go over certain things, your cursor changes. Well, in the same way, if you choose different cursors over here, these are all different cursors that you can use. They call them tools, but they're really just cursors because it locks to your mouse and you use it as a control. So we're going to add audio right here. Alright, and so this is track select tool. And it's a very simple tool. I'm not even sure why it's a tool. However, you can actually select tracks with this tool, but only if that track has an actual clip or something else in it. So even if it just has a little transition, it can select that track. It's a very simple tool, really straight to the point. Now ripple edit, that is a little bit of an odd cursor. We'll go over that a lot more in later tutorials. And then there's the rolling edit tool, and it's a little bit similar but not really. Now rate stretch tool, that is a very useful tool and it can be used in different circumstances. Alright, so I'll let you get a little bit of a preview of this audio clip. Okay, so now that we have a little bit of a preview, we know what it sounds like. So we're going to use this rate stretch tool, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You're literally going to stretch and squeeze the rate of the clips, and by rate, I mean speed, the actual rate that the video plays at. So we're going to squeeze it down, and now you're going to see something much different than you just saw. Kind of sounds like somebody overwound a music box. So we're going to command Z that, and now we're going to actually make it. And at this point, you'll notice so that's actually 40%, roughly 34% of the percentage right here, and that'll actually tell you the percent of the speed that you're running at. Right now, we're running at 66% of the speed. Of the actual speed that it was. So now we're going to command Z that. And the next tool is the razor tool, and that's what I used earlier to cut up the clips. This razor tool is exactly what you might think it does. So we're going to use it with C, and that'll activate it. And as you can see right here, there are no clips, so it's got a cross through it. However, when we go over here, that cross removes, and you can click on different spots in the clip to actually separate them. And if you wanted to, you could actually remove entire sections of a clip by cutting two places and then going up here and selecting your selection tool, or hitting V, which is my favorite tool because it basically does almost everything, and then clicking the clip that you just cut out and deleting it with the delete key. Very simple. And as you can see, clips actually snap to certain areas. So if you wanted to have a clip down here actually line up, it would actually snap. You can turn this off, and we'll cover that in the next video. So now that we know how to cut clips, I'll show you a little bit of a preview of this. We're actually going to turn this down because I don't like it up so loud. This yellow line actually represents the decibels at which the video is playing at, and we'll go over that more. As you can see, it kind of cut from where it was playing and ended up somewhere else. And that was actually the point at which we cut the rest of the clip. So moving on, this is the slip tool. This tool is a little bit more complicated, so we're going to leave that for another video. The slide tool is likewise a little bit more complicated as it stretches, or not stretches honestly. The slide tool, it basically, the clip that you choose to drag along, the clip connected to it will actually change its duration. It will not change its rate or its speed, but it will change its duration. So if it has more to show, it will actually show it. And as you can see, it locks it at the end of the possibilities of how long that clip can be. So this is actually where the end of the clip would be if we decided to extend it to show the rest of the video or clip. This is actually a little bit more complicated than you might think, so we'll definitely go over that more in later videos. The pen tool is also a little bit complicated, but it's simpler than you might think, so maybe we'll go over that very soon. Hand tool is literally just moving the mouse in order to scroll through the timeline. It's a little bit of a useless tool in my opinion, because you can actually scroll by using the bar or by using your scroll tool on your mouse, and by holding command or control depending on what system you're on, you can actually scroll right and left. So it seems like a little bit of a pointless tool to me. And then there's the zoom tool. This is actually a little bit of a nice tool to have if you are hoping to zoom in on a particular place that you know that's where it's at, and you don't want to lose it by zooming in to the wrong place. For instance, if I wanted to zoom in right here and I knew exactly where I needed to be, if I just did that, now I've lost it. This way I can actually drag this little box and it'll zoom exactly to that point. That can be useful in certain scenarios where you need to find exactly a certain point that you need to do some fine editing on. Okay, so that concludes this tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed this so far. If you like what you see, go ahead and drop a like, hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and I hope to see you in the next one.